Good afternoon, welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Let's hold off on the Irish dancing and let's talk about how we're going to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day, once a solemn Catholic holiday marking the legacy of Ireland's patron saint, has evolved into a kind of worldwide spectacle of indulgence. I want to be clear, this isn't true of countries that don't have strong Irish ties and large Irish immigrant populations. However, unfortunately, owing to corporate greed and Guinness and its marketing, wherever Guinness is, there's some kind of celebration of St. Patrick's Day. It's not as pronounced as here in the United States and in Ireland, however. Traditionally, the day offered a brief reprieve from Lenten fasting. It allowed for moderate feasting and celebration, but today, as we celebrate it, few people pause to reflect on the religious significance of the occasion. Perhaps because we're too busy drinking to the point of blackout before noon. What was once a religious commemoration has transformed into one of the most notorious drinking holidays. It's rivaled only by New Year's Eve in terms of statistics. For many, March the 17th is not about faith or heritage, it's just an excuse to celebrate and drink excessively, wrapped in a thin veneer of quote-unquote cultural celebration. Alcohol companies spearhead the marketing and therefore they reap enormous profits because millions will flock to bars. In fact, frankly, many people tend to start their revelry as early as possible. And when it falls close to a weekend, you're looking at an entire weekend of revelry and quote-unquote celebration. The absurdity of it all is on display every year for the world to see. Over the past 15 years, fatal car crashes involving alcohol on St. Patrick's Day was 16.1% more common than the rest of March. On St. Patrick's Day, beer sales tend to climb up to about 174%. Liquor sales spike to about 153%. Now, these statistics fluctuate every year, but they are around that number. Whether people are too drunk to figure out the route of their driving or they simply lose reason in the excitement of the day, I can't help but wonder how long we intend to continue this annual quote-unquote tradition before we realize we have a destructive cultural norm. This commentary is difficult for me to deliver because this is very personal. One thing Al Cresta and my friend Brian Shanley have reminded me of is that the stories of my past are parts of the journey that Christ took to lead me from where I was to where I am today. Alcoholism runs in my family, and it should come as no surprise, therefore, that I developed a problem with alcohol from a young age. In the British world, consuming alcohol before 18 is permitted by law when you're with your parents, and you're allowed to consume alcohol by yourself from 18 onwards. It didn't take long for me to develop a problem. My genetic predisposition was a large contributor to that, but very honestly, my friend groups, my lifestyle, the beliefs I held, all of those contributed to the problem I developed. It got very bad very fast. I don't wish to go into details, but I will honestly say I remember the night when I hit rock bottom. I remember looking in the mirror, quite literally, and taking a good look at myself, realizing that this wasn't who I wanted to be anymore. It was the grace of God that allowed me the about turn in life that I got, and I'm thankful for that. But that's also why I get personally concerned about rampant inebriation in society. Call it a fatherly instinct to protect my young children, but also call it just fellow human concern. I know firsthand how catastrophic and calamitous untempered alcohol consumption can be. Because beyond the light-hearted revelry, the darker consequences of the way we celebrate St. Patrick's Day cannot be ignored by us Catholics. Every year, cities ramp up police presence to combat alcohol-fueled disorder, drunk driving, and hospital visits due to alcohol poisoning on St. Patrick's Day. In LA, multiple DUI checkpoints are set up every year in an attempt to curb dangerous behavior. No amount of law enforcement can prevent the deeper societal issues that St. Patrick's Day exposes, the glorification of binge drinking and the reinforcement of some rather ridiculous cultural stereotypes. So the trope of the hard-drinking Irishman, it's seen to be declared with some kind of pride, but it embeds the idea really that one's ability to hold one's liquor seems to be a measure of either manhood or now women are in the mix of personal worth. The broader issue is not that drinking is an accepted social activity, it's fine, but it's seen as a kind of rite of passage. In the US especially, where legal restrictions, for some reason, seem to fuel the appeal of alcohol. And without a cultural shift in how we approach alcohol consumption, unhealthy attitudes surrounding alcohol is going to persist, especially with how we celebrate St. Patrick's Day. So yes, amid the sea of clover-shaped cookies, green beer, kitschy slogans, the real meaning of St. Patrick's Day is always forgotten. So perhaps instead of pretending that our celebration is actually still about Ireland's patron saint, maybe we can be honest with ourselves. Let's create a new day where we openly celebrate binge drinking, and then we can celebrate St. Patrick's Day as the actual liturgical feast day it is, and the pretense would be gone. Because I want to make clear, I'm not a Puritan against the consumption of alcohol. Frankly, the best alcohol throughout the history of mankind came about through some direct or indirect relationship with the Catholic Church. The Bible has numerous verses about partaking in wine for celebration. Our Eucharistic celebration necessitates wine. It's a literal Thanksgiving feast. I don't drink because of my own past, but I don't believe that temperate consumption of alcohol is sinful at all. It is excessive and riotous consumption of alcohol that perturbs me personally. The scriptures acknowledge the goodness of wine and its place in human celebration, but it also warns against its abuse. Like all of God's gifts, alcohol can be misused when it's not ordered toward our well-being and His glory. Scripture provides stark examples of the dangers of excess. Noah's drunkenness, Paul's admonitions against overindulgence in 1 Corinthians and Galatians. All of these illustrate how uncontrolled consumption lead to sin and even exclusion from the kingdom of heaven. God's prohibitions are not arbitrary restrictions. They are safeguards for our spiritual and physical well-being. So to binge drink and to excessively drink in the name of a saint who is holy and virtuous, I think adds sacrilege to the mix. Because drunkenness impairs the faculties of reason and free will that distinguish us as human beings from the animals and enables us to seek truth and virtue and God. When we surrender these faculties to intoxication, we risk not only personal harm, but moral and spiritual decline and the harm to the lives of others. Excessive drinking often leads to further sins. Impaired judgment weakens our ability to resist temptation and choose the good, moral, virtuous life. The Catechism classifies drunkenness as a sin against the fifth commandment, and that's why there's a responsibility to care for our bodies and to protect life. The virtue of temperance is that antidote. It guides us to enjoy alcohol in moderation so that it enhances rather than diminishes our relationships, health, and freedom. And to that end, I want to turn our consideration once again to St. Patrick. St. Patrick left behind two primary writings, the Confessio, his spiritual autobiography, and the Letter to Coroticus, a rebuke of slave traders. Here are some quotes attributed to him. I arise today through the mighty strength and invocation of the Trinity, through belief in the threeness, through confession of the oneness of the Creator of creation. There is no other God, nor will there ever be, nor was there ever, except God the unbegotten Father, without beginning, from whom is all beginning, the Lord of the universe, as we have been taught. I am greatly a debtor to God, who has bestowed His grace so largely upon me, that many should through me be born again to God and brought to full life. I came to the people of Ireland to preach the gospel and to suffer insult from the unbelievers. I am Patrick, a sinner most unlearned, the least of all the faithful, and utterly despised by many. I did not recognize the true God. I was taken into captivity to Ireland with many thousands of people. But after I arrived in Ireland, every day I had to tend sheep and I prayed frequently during the day. More and more the love of God increased and my sense of awe before God. I bear no ill will to those who brought me captivity. They are my brothers and fellow Christians. That I might imitate in some degree those whom the Lord long ago foretold would herald His gospel for a witness to all nations before the end of the world. I mean, my brothers and sisters, these quotes reflect St. Patrick's deep faith, humility, and his temperance of his lower appetites, his perseverance, his missionary zeal in bringing Christianity to Ireland. Honestly, on his feast day, I encourage all of us to aspire to be the kind of man that St. Patrick was and is. So yes, have a joyous St. Patrick's Day, and let's grow in virtue even through our celebration. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.